位女士、各位先生，晚安！欢迎各位今天晚上来雅颂坊参加我们所举办的这场音乐会。这场音乐会叫做“探寻台大庆祝建校85周年南安普敦大学访台的一场交流音乐会。我是台大艺文中心的主任沈东，我同时也是音乐学研究所的教授。今天晚上我们有非常多的国际的贵宾，为了比较精确的掌控我们音乐会的时间，所以这场音乐会基本上我们用英文来进行，那加上一点点的中文的说明，所以以下我就要开始改变我的频道，开始切换成英文 mode。Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Very welcome you to attend this concert. The concert title is the Mei Ricercari. The University of Southampton celebrates the 85th anniversary of National Taiwan University. We will have musicians from both universities, and very precious, we will have musical instruments from the Mei Cultural Foundation, and I hope you enjoyed it. But before the program starts, I would like to take this opportunity to make certain introduction to you, some of our very honorable guests who attend this concert. The first one, I will start from guests who travel far away to come to Taipei. First one will be the Vice-Chancellor of the Southampton University, Dr. Bin. And secondly, I would like to address to the delegation from Southampton. Some of the professors that are on the backstage, but some of you here, would you please stand up and wave your hands? The delegation. We see many professors here. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoy your stay in Taipei in NTU campus. And there's one more very important guest who will be Ambassador Chris Wood. Is he here? Please, thank you. The British Trade and Cultural Office, Ambassador Wood, thank you for your coming. And in addition, I would like to introduce some of my fellow colleagues from NTU. The first one is Vice President Dr. Zhang Qingrui. And then the Dean for International Affairs of NTU, Dean Zhang Shuying Zhang. And the Dean of the College of Liberal Arts, Dr. Chen Ruoshui. Thank you. And I think there are many more honorable guests here. I can, going on my introduction, go on and on. But I know you would like to have music instead of my introduction. So, but there's one more person I really need to introduce to you, who is the key person of this concert. He's not only a wonderful pianist, but also excellent musicologist, who is the director of the Graduate Institute of Musicology of NTU. Would you please give me your hand? Let's welcome Dr. Jen-yen Chen on the stage.
谢谢沈老师，校长、副校长、各位院长、各位贵宾，晚安。我很荣幸欢迎大家莅临今天晚上的台大85年度校庆音乐会。Vice-Chancellor Bin, Vice President Zhang, deans, professors, honored guests, it's my honor to welcome you to tonight's NTU 85th anniversary concert. This special event is in part an outcome of the collaboration between the Graduate Institute of Musicology at National Taiwan University and the Department of Music of the University of Southampton, which began in 2009 and has seen many fruitful results thus far, including a student exchange program that has sent young scholars from each side to the other, and of course tonight's concert program featuring a dialogue of Western and Asian musical cultures. A very special thanks is owed to the Chi-mei Cultural Foundation for offering us the rare opportunity to hear two of their precious antique stringed instruments, cellos by the Italian makers Stradivarius and Amarti. Let me briefly explain that tonight I'll be responsible for introducing most of the musical selections to you, and I'll do so mainly in English in order to save time and stay as close as possible to our planned 8 p.m. conclusion. It's now my pleasure to introduce Thomas Irvine, Professor of Music at the University of Southampton, who will offer general words of welcome and then introduce tonight's first musical work to you. So please let's warmly welcome Professor Thomas Irvine.
Thank you, Jen-yen. So many honored guests, I don't know where to start again. Vice-Chancellor, Mr. Vice President, Ambassador Wood, distinguished colleagues. It's a great pleasure to be here tonight on the final concert of our short but intense tour of Taiwan with the Mei Ricercari, and to celebrate also the 85th birthday of National Taiwan University. I could say a personal word about the collaboration that has grown here since my first visit in 2009. We've had a wonderful student exchange. We've welcomed very talented students from NTU and sent a student to you, George Holloway, whose life was never the same after he came back. He now lives in China. I have to say my own work as a scholar was changed profoundly and continues to be changed by the encounters that I have had here at NTU, beginning with the first time that I was graciously invited to speak, and then very recently I came to the meeting of the International Musicological Society East Asia section here in Taipei. Was a wonderful conference, and was widely regarded as a turning point in my field, and I could go on about that, but I won't. My next job is to thank some people who've helped put this together, besides our wonderful friends at Taida, and that are the Chi-mei Culture Foundation, who have graciously lent us some remarkable instruments, who I will now like to introduce to you. They're kept at a safe distance from the speakers, because speakers tend to walk backwards. On your right is a cello by Andrea Amarti from 1556. It is probably the oldest surviving cello still in playable condition in the world. It was made in Cremona by Andrea Amarti, the founder of the Amarti dynasty, as a commission for the court of France. And the actual details are somewhat shrouded in mystery, but we believe the connection was through Caterina de' Medici, who was the Queen of France, and brought music with her from, Jen-yen is nodding, which is good, that's, on your left is the the ex-Pauli it's called. I'll come to the lady in a moment. The ex-Pauli by Antonio Stradivarius, 1730. It's one of his last instruments. He made it when he was over 80 years old. It has a long and distinguished history, also somewhat shrouded in mystery. The first 80 or so years of its history are unknown to us. It appeared in the mid-19th century in France, then spent quite a lot of time in England, including in the possession of a Mr. Pauli from Reigate. We don't know anything about him. Later, it was the cello of Hugo Becker, who was the founder of modern German cello playing and the teacher of many, many famous cellists, including Gregor Piatigorsky. Both of these cellos are now in the possession of the Chi-mei Culture Foundation in Tainan, who have been extraordinarily generous and allowed us to use them for the entire weekend. It's going to be a tough parting for us as listeners. We've heard them 3 nights in a row now, and particularly for the cellist, who's going to have to come back to real life. Finally, I'd like to introduce the bow. The bow is, I'm very fond of bows, and I feel like the bow would get short shrift. The bow is a bow by Niklaus Kittel, who was a jeweler and craftsman at the court of the Tsars of Russia in the early and mid-19th century. A kittel bow is something very special. The musicians, string players, consider them to be the finest of all bows, and they're extraordinarily rare. So a violin maker or dealer who works in this area might see 2 or 3 kittel bows in their entire career. I don't know how many kittel bows there are in Tainan, but I've seen more than 3. So those are the 3 instruments. But instruments are instruments. They wouldn't sound if there weren't people. So now it's my duty to and pleasure to introduce tonight's musicians. I will begin with our colleagues from Southampton, with the cellist, Nicola Heinrich, who teaches cello at Winchester College, which is the oldest continuously operating school in the United Kingdom. They've been making music there every day since 1348, so several hundred years before the cellos. And we're very glad that she's been able to join us from a few miles up the M3. And the pianist and composer, Professor Michael Finnissy, my colleague, my office neighbor, which has been when I came to Southampton and realized that Michael Finnissy was on my corridor, I nearly fainted, because he's a very, very distinguished composer, and he has written these extraordinary pieces for this evening, and Jen-yen will tell you more about them as the evening continues. Now, finally, I would like to introduce the musicians from who we are about to hear. These are, and I have this written out, transliterated with accents. Yes, I'm going to try. The violinist and the cellist are both. Oh, you can go now. Yeah, Jen-yen is going to play the piano, and he needs to compose himself, so he would like to go. Goodbye. The violinist, Yo Wang-ling. Thank you. Is a graduate of Taida, where she studied, wait for it, Japanese language and literature. Very sensible. She plays the violin beautifully and is joined this trio this evening. The cellist, Min-erh. The cellist is a student of musicology at the Graduate Institute of Musicology, and his paper at the conference in October was very warmly received, as I recall, and that's saying something for a graduate student. So we're very happy that he can also play the cello. And the pianist is my old friend, Jen-yen, whom I know as Jen-yen because we're really just 2 guys from New York who've ended up teaching elsewhere from where we come from. Finally, I have been asked to say a few words about the first piece you're going to hear, which is a piece of well-known Western classical music by Joseph Haydn. And as an 18th centuryist, I suppose it falls to me to say something about, I could say quite a lot about Haydn. This is a piece from his later years, and as some of you may know, Joseph Haydn was a very famous composer in Central Europe. He was a court Kapellmeister to the Prince Esterházys. His prince died in 1790, and he was released at full pay because the next prince didn't want to have a musical establishment at their palaces. And he then, at the age of 60 or so, decided to seek his fortune in London, which was the good place to go if he wanted to make a lot of money with music. And he had quite a following already through his many publications of his music there. And this trio dates from his first years in London, where he was received immediately with open arms, and it's one of the great stories of a public finding its favorite composer. Also, he was cleverly positioned in a way that we would regard today as public relations. It was organized for him that he would receive a DMus from Oxford so that he could write Dr. Haydn on his card, so that he would then be received in the best houses in London, also from the non-musical who might never have heard of him. At least they would say, well, there's a Dr. Haydn come to see us, he must be important. These pieces are pieces of music that aren't necessarily for performance in concert. They are for performance at home, and they are for performance primarily by the pianist. You may notice that the piano part is very prominent, and the piano part in those days, this is the era of Jane Austen, remember? An author dear to our heart in Southampton, may I say? would be played by a young woman of breeding and distinction, showing her accomplishment with difficult music by a well-known composer, accompanied perhaps by her brothers at the violin and cello, or perhaps a music teacher. Young ladies didn't play the cello or the violin really very much in those days. I think that's enough to say about it. Should take us back to the salon in the 1790s, to a slightly different place than we've been, those of us who've been on the tour in the last few days. But I think that I've given Professor Chen enough rest, and I will now send him out to play. Thank you very much, and do enjoy the concert.